Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, and greetings from Madrid. Welcome to the second edition of the Glasgow Declaration Global Roundtable for the Tourism Climate Action. Today is the afternoon session. Yesterday we had the morning session, and we are very happy to have you here with us. I'm Roxana Ishtari, Senior Project Specialist at the Sustainable Tourism and Resilience Department at UN Tourism. Thank you for joining us today's session, which is built actually on the success of the first roundtable, which we held at Fitur in January 2024. And as you may have already seen the program, we have a very enriching lineup of speakers, including national level signatories, which is a great honor actually for us, as they are the UN Tourism Direct Constituent. And we are also very pleased to have the front-running signatories from 3 categories: from destination, businesses, and also supporting organization. Before we start, I would like to bring to your attention a few grounding rules to make sure that we have a very smooth session together and we can enjoy. So please make sure that you are muted when you are not speaking, and we also invite and encourage you also to rename yourself on Zoom by right click, so you can put the name of your organization and put your name so we know who is with us today. And you can post your question in the chat during a Q&A. At the end of each session will be a Q&A, so you can post the question in the chat, or also we would invite you to open your mic and share your question. And please note that the session is going to be recorded, and we consider that we have your consent unless you communicate to us. So without any further ado, I would like to invite our Executive Director, Mrs. Zorica Urusevic, to open remarks. Dear Zorica, thank you very much for your constant support to the Glasgow Declaration, for our activities, for the whole community. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Roxana and Virginia, for putting together this series of dialogue and making the community of practice grow, and hopefully for a huge impact as well, a positive impact. So, dear ministers, dear speakers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to welcome you all to another Glasgow Declaration Global Roundtable on Tourism Climate Action. And as I just said, this is really in the build-up of creating a community of practice on climate action, which I think is really timely, as we are going to combine national, local, regional, and private sector entities. Now, our collective efforts to address climate change within the sector hold a paramount importance. We saw during the edition in Fitur that many of you showcased the achievement and the success stories, which certainly have inspired many more of us, and the Glasgow Declaration signatory and the insight of the implementation report of 2023, which we shared. So we had quite a diverse lineup of speakers who shared generously their insights and experiences, and I think that the spirit we need to build our sector on, learning from each other, collaborating, and empowering all stakeholders. I think this is really because every action counts. In today's panel, I'm very pleased to see more signatories sharing their expertise, and I'm particularly looking forward to the Honduran Tourism Institute as our member state presenting their climate action, in addition to distinguished representatives from destination, private sector, and civil society. The extreme weather events impacting the planet and our society are not isolated incidents. They highlight the pressing needs to address the underlying causes and consequences of climate change immediately and proactively. We very well know that our sector is particularly vulnerable to the impact of extreme weather and climate change, such as rising sea level, heat waves, and increased frequency of natural disaster, which leads at a disruption of the pattern of tourism flows, to which we need to adapt. Our sector is also a significant contributor to carbon emission, mainly through transportation, but not only, necessitating immediate action to mitigate its environmental footprint. UN Tourism is guiding the global sector in stepping up its climate action ambition, and the Glasgow Declaration and its pathways provide an unprecedented global framework for action to make the shift at net zero sector by 2050. We have now almost 900 signatories, an increasing number, which reflects the growing commitment of the tourism actors. This includes destinations, national, subnational, and local businesses, and as well supporting organizations such as NGOs and CSO. And I think that it is really promising, and I'm really happy to see many of you, as yesterday already, that was an incredible type of exchange, and I think that we are looking forward to the next level of discussion today. So we hope that this is going to as well become I can say, permanent platform of exchange that can start here, and then you can pick it up on bilateral basis. We hope that we all are going to get inspired to act, and we know that the pathway to decarbonize, regenerate, measure, and finance requires a strong collaboration, and I think this is all the spirit of this meeting. So as today, we as well have climate focal points from ministries of tourism with us, because we need to understand that the importance of tourism governance in the climate talks at a national level. We all know that we are heading to the delivery of the next NDC in February, March next year, and we really encourage tourism actors and tourism national entities to be involved in the crafting of such NDCs. I as well would like to share with you that we are currently in discussion with Azerbaijan and UNFCCC for the COP29, because we are really looking at advocacy effort and trying to position tourism in the climate agenda, increasing the importance and the presence of all tourism stakeholders in Baku this year. And of course, we will keep you posted of opportunities, including the importance to join efforts of tourism governance to contribute to the NDCs, as I said it earlier. So we have a lot ahead of us, and without any more time, I really look forward to our discussion. And I, again, want to thank you, Virginia and Roxana, for the great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Zorica, for very inspiring opening remarks. Actually, it's really a precious opportunity for us to have you here in presence, and also encouraging for our community and its signatories to be here. So without any further ado, I think we can start the roundtable. The roundtable is going to be moderated by my very dear colleague, Ms. Virginia Fernandez-Trapa, Program Coordinator here at Sustainable Tourism and Resilience Department. So Virginia, the floor is yours, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Roxana, for the introduction, and of course, thanks to our Executive Director, dear Zorica, for supporting the development of this community of practice, which, as you say, is very much needed, and we hope can continue running for the years to come. I'd also like to thank all the speakers that are here with us today, and also the colleagues in the audience, signatories or not signatories, for their interest in this crucial topic, and also the willingness to exchange and to learn. Today we have with us the Honduran Tourism Institute, represented by its Vice Minister, Luis Chavez. And then we also have representatives from Futuris, German NGO. We have Journey Latin America tour operator from the UK. We have the Blue Yonder and Resilient Destinations Foundation from India, and we have Tahi from New Zealand. I will introduce with more details each of the speakers when it is their time to speak. Just before we go into the presentations, I'd like to share just a few introductory thoughts, mainly to put things in context, as basically all this exercise to share further starts with the preparation of our implementation report. If we could share the slide of the implementation report, please. This implementation report, which we released at FITUR, was actually built on the many reports, the progress reports that our signatories submitted, and also the climate action plans which we received from signatories. So it's basically presenting a a systematic analysis and aggregated findings of what's going on within the network. And one of the main takeaways that we have is that basically the report confirms the value of working collectively in climate action. The topic is so broad and very complex. So the more that we can exchange and synergize, the more that we optimize our efforts. The approach proposed by the Glasgow Declaration, which is relatively simple, I don't mean easy, but simple and flexible. You know, the 5 pathways: measure, decarbonize, regenerate, and finance has catalyzed the creation of hundreds of climate action plans, which is quite a pioneering achievement in our sector, since never before we were embarking on the development of climate action plans, whether these are climate action plans as new plans or whether we are enhancing existing plans with climate action elements. As you can imagine, in the reports that we received and the plans that we received, there are multiplicity of approaches. It is very diverse. I guess this is very aligned with the nature of our sector, which is also very diverse, but all the approaches are enriching. And another thing that we saw is that progressively we're seeing complementarity across the roles of each type of stakeholder in our sector in climate action. One of the recommendations of the report is that we further engage in raising awareness about the strategies of our signatories, and especially those with potential to lead for multiplier effects. So basically here we are trying to stay on task with the global roundtables. And let's now move on into the discussion. We will start with a presentation from Instituto Hondureño de Turismo. And then we have structured the session in 2 blocks of questions. The first part will have a stronger focus on measurement and decarbonization, and the second part would have a focus on regeneration and collaboration. Depending on the time left, we will have a third round. I'm not sure. We will for sure open for questions and answers after each of the blocks, content blocks. So as Roxana said, you can type your questions in the chat, or if I see that we're doing well with time, I'll just ask you to open your mics so that it is truly more interactive. Okay, so let's get started now with a presentation from Instituto Hondureño de Turismo. I have really the honor to invite Mr. Luis Guillermo Chévez, Vice Minister. Mr. Chévez will be sharing with us about the process that they are following in Honduras to develop their climate action plan. So Mr. Chévez, thank you so much for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Virginia. It's a pleasure actually to share this effort coming from the Honduras government. We quickly, to introduce ourselves, we started government 2 years ago, and it was the first time that the environment was put on top of mind of many government policies. One of those is, sorry, I have a mistake here. Let me change my presentation to English. My apologies.
No problem. Take your time.
Give me one
Mr.
second.
Chévez, if you want, I have the presentation in English and I can share my screen if
I will
it's
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I'll do that.
Yes.
Just
I keep explaining our efforts. So back in 2022, we started with communications with colleagues from the environmental sector, that the way knowing that Honduras is one of the most vulnerable countries of the world, according to the German index. So what to do about it? And in some way, we hear about the Glasgow Declaration, and we say, okay, this seems to be an opportunity for a country like ours to speak out in some way to the world and join the effort in another way. So building a climate action plan for us has been a journey, because we started from a bottom point where at the Institute of Tourism of Honduras, we didn't have anyone, a specialist on the topic. We didn't have any unit. We did have a sustainability unit that were kind of dealing with climate action or climate change challenges. At the same time, we were receiving reports from international cooperation saying that tourism is one of the most vulnerable sectors regarding climate crisis. So we were like, we are a country that rely on sun and beach. We rely on diving. We rely on cruise ship tourism. And all of this is around the coral reef, one of the most treated animals in the world regarding climate change. So we needed to do something. We needed to act. And we needed to engage our private sector in this process. So we decided to join the declaration in our own, just as the government, just as the Honduras Institute of Tourism. And the climate action plan actually is very basic. It's to empower and engage our private sector. It's to focus on bring them into the topic and make them react in some way. Here we are in a climate crisis. We know it's affecting us. What we're gonna do about it? Honduras has coming from a long time relationship with climate change strategies and other topics in general. You know, like we built our national climate change strategy back in 2013. We created a law on 2013. We built our first NDC in 2015, and then we created a national climate adaptation plan in 2018. But we were not having a strategy for tourism specifically. We didn't have any action plan. Our last NDC on 2020 didn't consider the tourism sector as a matter of fact, let's say. So we started to join this process. Can you go to the next one, please? So at the end of December 2022, we joined the Glasgow Declaration. We start an important work with the Travel Foundation, which I want to point out that they've been great partners in this process. So we started from the bottom line, as I say. We hired someone to work just on climate change. We started to engage our community. We created a forum last year in 2023, so we can inform the private sector. We brought people from all over Latin America and the Caribbean to let us know what's going on in other countries and what they're doing about sustainable tourism and climate action. So that way we could get inspired. At the same time, we were working in our action plan. We created our community of practice, which it was very interesting because we engaged there our national university, our organized private sector through the Chamber of Tourism. We engaged our environmental minister as they didn't see tourism as a topic of matter. So we were advocating to all these people, not just to the private sector, but to our own government of what it means climate action for us. So after that, we are starting with execution of actions. So we are first focusing on measuring, but at the same time, we want to take actions that help us to regenerate, which are the two topics of the roundtable, right? So we know we need to measure because we need to show to the developed world that we are doing our own effort, even though we are not a country who produce a lot of emissions. But at the same time, we need to regenerate because we are a very vulnerable country. So many of our strategies are focused on engaging our private sector, on measuring, but at the same time, acting by incorporating forest restoration, voluntary carbon credits, doing some actions to reduce waste, which is important for us because our waste management is terrible. So we reproduce a lot of our EI coming from our trash, basically. So just by engaging with environmental practices, we are changing a lot. And that's what we promoting through this climate action plan. The main goal is to actually engage our private sector and our government in why it is important to take action in tourism. And the Glasgow Declaration has provided the right tool to us to do that. So from a South country perspective, we now can say it's very helpful. I remember this journey at the beginning where I was complaining like, listen, you just talk about reducing emissions, but we are a vulnerable country. We want to talk about adaptation. Now we can see we can do both. We can do both in the same activity. We can regenerate our country by reducing our emissions and take action on the climate crisis and change our future, which is the main goal. So that's the main topics that I wanted to point it out today. If you have any question, I'm happy to answer now or later.
Thank you so much, Vice Minister. It's really great to have Honduras among the signatories and really great to see how you are leading by example. We can see that a lot has been accomplished since the signature moment, and we look forward to really continue learning as you progress with implementation of the plan and different actions. Actually, your work is quite aligned to one of our to our latest, I would say, publication, which was released not so long ago in March 2024 at ITV. It is the policy guidance to support climate action by national tourism administrations. We have a slide with a QR code that perhaps we can display for the audience. Yeah, thanks again for your openness to share with the network. I'm sure there's going to be questions for you in the Q&A. So just a side note on the publication, I just made reference to the policy guidance. It was developed in consultation with pioneering figure, if you allow me the expression, climate action focal points in ministries of tourism. So upon the invitation of our Secretary General, ministers of tourism actually designated members of their teams to focus on climate action. And on the screen, you can see the 59 countries that so far have a climate action focal point for UNWTO inside the Ministry of Tourism, which for us, I mean, really having a group of committed people within our direct constituents means a lot, because that way we're really convinced we can advance faster, we can find solutions for questions faster. I mean, everything is more streamlined. So thank you to those climate action focal points, sorry, that are connected here today. Really great to have you on board. All right, so let's continue with the rest of colleagues that we have today with us. In the Vice Minister's presentation, actually, he made a lot of reference to many of the pathways, right? Because the measurement is mentioned, the regeneration is mentioned. We also talked about collaboration in many ways with other institutions, etc. So let's focus now on the first two, measure and decarbonization for this first round. I will start with you, Swantje, if you allow. Swantje Lehrers is Managing Director of Projects and Cooperations at Futuris, and she's also Chairwoman at ClimaLink. Dear Swantje, thank you so much for connecting, and can I ask you to introduce yourself in a couple lines, Futuris, ClimaLink? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Virginia, for inviting me to this roundtable session today. We are very honored. So yeah, Futuris is the sustainability initiative of the tourism industry in the DACH region here in the center of Europe, with about 40 travel company members in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. We have a lot of big tour operators on board as members like TUI, Their Tour, but we also have DMOs, we have hotel corporations, or for example, also travel tech companies like Amadeus. And together with our members, we are developing and implementing solutions to realize and support the sustainable transformation of the tourism industry. And as you can imagine, we are, of course, focusing a lot on climate action in our work and are very proud signatory of the Glasgow Declaration as well. So yeah, very happy to be here today. And we are very convinced that to enable effective climate action in the industry, we really need to generate a much better measurability and transparency of the emissions of travel products first. And our main aim is really to make climate footprints of travel products visible, on the one side in internal product management processes to make the products more climate friendly, but also to make them to make the climate footprints visible at the point of sale for the end customer. And to make this vision become a reality, we have founded the new organization Klimalink that I'm also the chairwoman of. And this organization will provide a central data platform with reliable, scientifically based emission data for travel products. And they will be all based on a consistent calculation standard. And on this basis, we can then build the basis to show climate footprints for travel products in any booking channels you can imagine, at any point of sale you can imagine, to really reach the customers with this information. But also we really want to get to a point where this consistent information, reliable emission data will be used in the product development departments of the tour operators to decarbonize the product portfolio.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. So can I ask you, what are the emission sources that you're trying to, for which you're trying to find alignment? Can you give us a bit more details, or is it just by travel package, or how are you working on this, let's say, consensus building operation?
Yeah, sure. Well, we already have developed common calculation methods, and we're doing this by the most relevant travel components. So focusing on the big emission drivers in the travel products that we have. And we have currently finalized the methods for flight, for rail, for car and bus. So obviously a lot of the mobility and transportation components are very, very relevant when it comes to emissions, of course. But also we have a finalized method for hotels. And until next year, we will also add holiday homes and shipping. So also, cruise ships, etc., to our standard methodology. And I'm also very proud to say that our current standard has already been officially and externally verified as compatible with the new ISO 14083. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there also is a EU regulation that's called the EU Count Emissions that will come into place, that will be really, really relevant for anyone who wants to display emissions of transport services in the EU in the future, and this regulation is based on this ISO. So we are very happy that our standard is already compliant with this ISO, and therefore very proven to be very reliable, and that the travel industry can really build on that and be sure that they are using good and reliable data.
Thank you. Amazing. So for the moment, it's Switzerland, Germany, and Austria. That's correct? Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Swantje, for the great efforts to support that, growing understanding. We have heard many times we need to find consensus on measurement. I am measuring with this methodology. I'm measuring with this other methodology. So I'm sure this is gonna help a lot. I hope really it can be exported and replicated beyond these three first countries. I will.
So please do get on board. Let us know if you're interested.
I'm sure many do. I'm sure many have questions also for you. So now I'll continue with our next panelist, Edward Wellham. Could we activate your camera, please, Edward?
Hi there. Unfortunately, my camera it's flickered off and it won't go back on again. So saying Zoom's unable to detect it, unfortunately.
Oh, right. That's unfortunate. I can't even see your vignette, but we can hear you. So let's work with what we have, as we usually do. So Edward is a customer services manager at Journey Latin America. Like I said, it is a tour operator from the UK specialized in travel to Latin America. So thank you for joining us. Can you tell us a bit more about your your business, Journey Latin America, and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Edward. Essentially, we're a specialist tour operator based in London. We sell tailor-made and group tour holidays to Latin America. So we work in all the countries of Central and South America. We always consider ourselves to be a responsible tour operator, but in recent years we've kind of looked at formalizing things. We've kind of implemented responsible business policies and measured our business against the UN sustainability goals, and that's involved climate action. In terms of with our carbon action plan, we first started measuring our carbon footprint, and we looked at the impact of all our client holidays, our office, our staff, and essentially we wanted to be able to engage with staff, with our DMCs, and look at how we could identify hotspots to determine which areas we could reduce. We began by measuring our own carbon emissions. It was a challenge, but we were able to use the Department of Environment and Rural Affairs in England, which is DEFRA. They provide emission conversion factors for greenhouse gas reporting. It's quite comprehensive for businesses across different industries. So with the help of the Glasgow Declaration, we were able to use the kind of resources as seminars and determine which areas to measure, and create a baseline of where we were. We started in 2019, and yeah, we're able now to measure our holidays and every aspect of our business, and yeah, understand the data and kind of improve upon that.
Thank you, Edward. Thank you so much. I mean, what was interesting for me to learn from your plan is that you actually did the measurements yourselves, because normally when we looked at the plans, many of the colleagues were asking consultants to support, because this is a complex exercise. So I'm curious if you could tell our colleagues connected here how much, I mean, did you have previous experience on measurement, or how much time did it take you to like educate yourself to actually get it done, and how the findings of this measurement led you to choose some decarbonization actions? Could you share a little bit more on those points, please?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it involved starting from the beginning. It was very overwhelming. As I say, the resources provided by the Glasgow Declaration were really helpful. Gave us a framework to work with, and we looked at different agencies, and a lot of them were using the information from DEFRA. And once you can kind of understand that data, it's the biggest challenge is actually getting your own information. So pulling out from your reservation system kind of the flights, and then using the DEFRA kind of factors, you can you work out the distance, and then you can look at kind of class and work out the carbon emission of each flight. For example, for holidays, there's factors for transport, for rail, cars, and accommodation. So we were able to arrive at some figures for each holiday we sell, and then using DEFRA, we're also able to get the emission factors for Scope 1, Scope 2, and other office emissions like waste and water.
Thank you so much, Edward, for the details that you're sharing with us. I suppose it's encouraging for many to remove a bit the fears. Nobody's saying it's easy, but it can be done. So I'll encourage you to start looking at these naughty numbers. Let's hear now from our third panelist. She's Susan Craig, founder and CEO of Tahi in New Zealand. It's actually quite nice to have the opportunity to listen to you live in this time zone, Susan, since you are currently in Europe. So could you introduce Tahi, please, for the audience?
Thank you very much for the introduction and for inviting me here today. It's a real honor. So I suppose I come from quite a different perspective. Tahi is a small ecotourism resort in the north of the North Island of New Zealand. And it comes with its own unique set of experiences and challenges and opportunities, which can be sort of replicated elsewhere in the world. So 2 decades ago, Tahi was a rundown cattle farm, and today it's a thriving native biodiverse ecosphere. So how did we get there? And tourism was one of the large financial drivers in this transformation. But from the very onset, we took very much a science-led approach and looked at our whole value chain, whether that was the environment or the financial. So we diversified into different commercial products like honey, which is probably by far our biggest commercial driver now, and more recently skincare. And 100% of the profits go back into the regeneration and restoration of the land, but also of the community. So in the last 20 years, we planted or regenerated 8.8 million indigenous trees, re-established 20 wetlands and lakes. And what that's meant is 71 bird species have returned. So New Zealand's all about the birds. There were no animals, and that's more birds than most native parks in New Zealand. So that puts it a little bit to scale, the achievement. And what it shows, and that's one of the biggest indicators of a healthy whole ecosystem. So we're biodiversity positive and carbon negative. And we've won many awards. We're the most sustainable business in New Zealand. We've Restoring Nature Award, both 21 and 22, and many other awards for our various products. So I think that's a little bit about Tahi.
Thank you so much. It's very impressive. And you're also a member of the Long Run, actually, one of our supporting organization signatories, to whom we are also thankful for the great collaboration we have with them. They're quite an ambassador also for Glasgow Declaration, so it's much appreciated. Okay, so let me ask you a question on measurement then, since that's the focus of our first round. So I guess you said you're carbon negative, sorry, so you're measuring the footprint of your operations, but you also measure the potential of biodiversity to sequester carbon. Are you measuring how ecosystems function in this way? Can you explain it to us, how you're doing this?
Yes, we are. So, and you mentioned the Long Run. So they're one of our have been a key driver in what we do, using their 4 pillars: community, conservation, culture, and commerce, to be really sustainable. So they've helped us push boundaries, but they're excellent also with measurement, whether it's wastewater, across the whole board. So they're fabulous. But how are we measuring? So from the beginning, as I mentioned earlier, we've taken a whole ecosystem approach, and we've looked beyond our carbon footprint and considered the broader environmental responsibilities. And by doing that, we've prioritized conserving and protected nature forests. So biodiversity is incredibly complex. It varies from every place in the world, even from one valley to the next valley can have some significant differences. So, and it can't be distilled into a single metrics like CO2, which is why it's a harder metrics to adhere to than net zero, which is probably why there's been some resilience towards it, because what does it exactly mean? So for us, what we have done is, as I mentioned, we're protected and conserved first. So putting fences around and continual invasive species pest management systems. And then when there is really incredibly rundown there was no ecosystem, it was barren, we've gone about restoring. And so when you're looking at completely depleted landscapes, you want to create a biodiverse and resilient ecosystem. So you look at the indigenous trees that were there historically, and those cornerstone species that are going to attract the species that were there previously. So you're looking at the food, the water, and security. So birds or animals, wherever you are in the world, need those elements. So it's about restoring those. And then very importantly, carbon has been dominated when you're looking at natural solutions with monocultural plantations. And there, when you're planting, it's looking at an extensive number of stems or tree stems per hectare. And what that means is you get an excessive carbon sequestration initially, but not in the long term. So what we looked at is, and it's a very different rationale when you're planting. So there it's same species, same planting, same root system, same growth pattern. And so when you're looking at biodiverse systems, it's very much looking at the different species and allowing them the space that they need to do that. So you talked about measurement. So how do we, I suppose, prove what we're doing? So of course we use satellite imagery, we use drone imagery, we use eDNA, we use acoustics, species count, and we have a number of external certifiers that come in and look at what we're doing. And we've been very transparent with how we've gone about this, and we share our strategic restoration practices online, and we're always open to discussion, and we're constantly improving.
Thank you so much, Susan. I find this approach very, very impressive, and it would be great if we could scale it up in our sector, as many of our properties actually do protect a certain amount of hectares of land. I mean, there's the connection with biodiversity has been clear for many years. So now it's, I guess, building a clear nexus between climate action and biodiversity protection, as they are both and should be synergetic. So yeah. It actually aligns with the integrated approach that we propose through the Glasgow Declaration, although I have to say that we have noticed sometimes it's perceived more as a commitment to decarbonize, because it has the strong banner connected to the international goals of the Paris Agreement. But actually it is, the Glasgow Declaration proposes an integrated approach, mitigation, adaptation, and the idea is to create a virtuous circle between both, and also, to allow embracing the different realities of destinations. So if we're thinking about Europe, for example, we would expect that a climate action plan has a stronger focus on mitigation, because, many of the emissions are coming from Europe. On the other hand, a climate action plan from a small island developing state or a climate action plan from a vulnerable country has to have a stronger focus on adaptation. I mean, none of them should neglect the other side of the equation, but it has to be nuanced, a nuanced approach, so we can actually be ambitious, realistic, and, if you allow me, fair at the same time. So I'm calling now on our next speaker, Dr. Srija. Can you activate your camera, please, if possible?
Hey.
I'm hoping it works. Oh, yes, this is good.
Yeah.
There you are. Thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Srija
It's a pleasure.
She's CEO and co-founder of Resilient Destinations Foundation and the Blue Yonder. Can you, in a couple lines, introduce the organizations that you represent, please, for our audience?
The Blue Yonder is a pioneering responsible travel company based out of India, where we use our business as more of a platform to address the challenges that we see in the destinations that we work with. And lately, everywhere it's been climate change and related challenges, whether be it the mountains or the coast. So that's in short Blue Yonder for you.
Thank you so much. So
yeah.
now going into the measurement discussion, but maybe looking at other things that we can measure than the usual suspects. You are, I know you have a project to measure climate risk in the destinations that you work with, and that you work very closely with communities in identifying this risk, and that actually leads to co-creating solutions. Can you share a little bit about this approach, please?
Yeah, so though it's become pretty fashionable to use the word resilience these days, many places in the global south, we feel that have already reached a stage where it's more about figuring out a way to live with climate change impacts, and climate change adaptability and making a living with dignity in the middle of a crisis, because the crisis is already here for all the communities that we work with. So then the issue then is to understand what is happening to their lives, what is happening to the destination, to the community, and then figuring out ways to live with dignity. And irrespective of being part of a $5 billion USD tourism industry in the state of Kerala, which is in the peninsular India, facing the Arabian Sea on one side and the Western Ghat Mountains on the eastern side, we are also part of a climate-related events that costed the exchequer equal amount of money for rebuilding better in the same year. So whatever is the tourism industry's turnover a year, that much amount of money it cost for the state to rebuild after one of the major disasters due to climate change that happened in 2018. So last year we decided to set up Blue Yonder and another tech startup in climate solutions, of which I am a part of. I'm a climate scientist, and I joined Blue Yonder and this new not-for-profit company that we registered. We call it as Resilient Destinations Foundation, with a focus on co-creating climate resilient and climate responsible destinations. And when we say destinations, it's more in a broader sense of people and places, and not just from a tourism perspective. Because we strongly believe at the Blue Yonder and the Resilient Destinations Foundation that only if there are places where people are happy, where people live with dignity, can there be tourism. So tourism for Resilient Destination Foundation is secondary. For us, it is a community which is important. And the idea is to identify climate change related challenges and then bring the tourism, development and humanitarian sectors to address those by repurposing tourism resources and tools effectively. So it's more of a symbiotic existence where the sustainable development projects are transformed and tweaked into immersive travel experiences. So basically, the initiative resulting in destination resilience as well as climate responsibilities become a necessity for tourism industry and vice versa. So tourism industry is only a part of it. We are not focusing on the tourism industry. We are focusing on the community. But we realize that the tourism industry is a major critical component, a stakeholder, call it a sector of importance, somebody we cannot live with. But even beyond tourism industry, the sector, we feel it is the community and the destination which is important in times of climate change. So that is the project. It is creation of climate resilient and climate responsible destinations in which everyone comes together, not just the tourism industry, the development industry and the development sector and the humanitarian sector. And so that then can come together in their preparedness rather than, do a very on-the-spot decision making. Yes.
Thank you. Very, very interesting approach and project. This, advancing towards measuring climate risk, whether it is by building on local knowledge or having access to more sophisticated like technology and stuff, which I'm not sure leads to better results in many cases, but sometimes it does, is something which we are seeing. We are seeing as it's emerging actually in our in our last roundtable in January in Fitur. We had colleagues from Mexico representing actually Sustentur, a very good ambassador of ours as well as signatory, presenting a project called Adaptur, where basically they were doing economic quantifications of climate risk in some of the major destinations in Mexico, and they were explaining how this led to basically having a very strong argument for decision makers then to have to take action, because the cost of inaction you have mentioned, I mean, all the profits of one year just go in one crisis. So thank you, Srija. We will continue now in the Q&A. I'm sure the colleagues will certainly have questions for you as well.
Yes.
So, dear audience, is now your turn to join us with questions, comments. I mean, we have touched upon many elements, like the need to build consensus for measurement, nuanced approaches, integrating mitigation and adaptation. We can't measure everything, but we should not be blocked in taking action because we can't measure. Action should be prioritized. And just to break the ice, on the screen, you can see what takeaways we got in the implementation report, for example, regarding this measurement and decarbonization elements. Many of the plans already included measurement and were telling us how, if they didn't measure yet, meaning they didn't have a figure of CO2 or greenhouse gas emissions, they at least were having a plan to kickstart the measurement or had done it halfway or were piloting it. And in terms of decarbonization, we saw plenty of plans mentioning certain actions, but for example, one thing that struck us was that the choice of actions was not necessarily related to the relative impact. So for the moment, we're using more logic when we choose decarbonization actions than actual, impact data that perhaps, well, we're investing into something which is not the most efficient, but we still don't know. That's why also measurement and decarbonization had to go in synergy. All right, so okay, do we have any questions? Can you raise the hand, colleagues, please, if you have questions? Because I'm trying to check the chat, but it's only...
Yeah, we have Amer, Mr. Amer Badreddin.
I can't see the hand. Why is that?
It's a physical hand. It's not a virtual
hand.
Oh,
it's a physical hand. Thank you so much, Roxana. So, Amer, please say. No problem.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is
Oh, I can see you now. Great. Sorry, I couldn't see you.
Yep.
Please,
All
just
good.
introduce yourself, if you may.
Hello, everyone. I'm very glad to participate and thank you for this organization of a truly much needed. Is for I'm a hospitality consultant and I work for the organization, the Mutual's Hospitality Business Project, which is specialized in rural tourism, village rural tourism. And my first question for His Excellency Luis Chavez is, what are the challenges marketing to the private sector? And what are the highest intention category of the generation engaging with your campaign? And my second question would be to Mrs. Susan Craig is also, what are the generation that is engaged in the activities promoted?
Sorry, what do you mean by the generation?
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Ahmed. What do you mean by the generation engaged? Sorry, can you clarify?
Like yes, in marketing to generation millennial, generation Z.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah. What are the most, who are the most engaging in? Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Super.
And thank you, Ms. Virginia Fernandez. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so dear Vice Minister, would you like to go first, sharing a bit further on how the industry is reacting to all the, mobilization efforts that you're putting in place, and which generation is it picking up faster?
Yeah, sure. Well, what happened in Honduras, as I say, there is a common knowledge to everyone that we are highly affected by the climate crisis. So the reaction of the private sector is that recently they created a sustainable tourism unit for first time in history, which is just great. That means that they're going to have their own staff, not just us, the government having now a climate specialist in the team, but they are also bringing people who are aware of the importance of sustainability and taking action in terms of adapting to climate change or mitigating climate change. So those are good news because we were not expecting them to react so quickly. However, they reacted, created capacity on their own, and this team will assist the companies that are part of the Chamber of Tourism to engage in the process, which is something that we were expecting in some way. We were promoting it, but it is good that they created their own structure, let's say, to follow up with that. So that's I think a great reaction, and we will see how it goes now. The collaboration between the government and the private sector to act it together and create solutions together. But that's where we are right now.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister. Suzanne, do you want to comment on Amer's question?
So if you're looking at ages across engagement, so I would say we've definitely had an enhanced visitor experience, really strong community engagement and support, real resilience to climate change. And I suppose we leverage what we're doing. It's a real brand differentiator, whether it's with the ecotourism or the honey or the skincare, it's made a significant difference. If we're looking at hiring people, I would say we've had by 100-fold difference now in interest compared to what we would have had, say, a few years ago. And that goes, and then if you're looking at people coming for walks, it's sort of depending on their age group, there's different engagement. We also engage a lot with schools. We also have a school program. So we directly have people employed. That's all that they do is work within schools, whether it's with the beekeeping, whether it's with various restoration projects, but we've been written into the school curriculum in the area that we are now. So I think we're trying to engage full spectrum, and we've had really encouraging results. So I think we have had the land perhaps to do this, but I think even if you have a very small property, there's always different ways that you can engage and to restore.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amer, for your question. I don't see any more hands unless, Roxana, you tell me otherwise. So we're going to move on to our second block of content, the one on regeneration and collaboration. So before we start, I think regeneration is the most tricky pathway that we have in the Glasgow Declaration. Tricky in the sense that the description is quite complex, as in it has 3 parts. So if we read it together, so it's the pathway goes restore and protect ecosystems, supporting nature's ability to draw down carbon, as well as safeguarding biodiversity, food security, and water supply. So ecosystems element. Then it follows, as much of tourism is based in regions most immediately vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, ensure the sector can support affected and at-risk communities in resilience building, adaptation, and disaster response. So more second is resilience element, and then help visitors and host communities experience better balance with nature. So I would say the people element. So that's just to kickstart a bit the discussion and provide background. And I'm going to go with my first question for you, Edward. It's great to have you on camera now. I'm glad you could fix that. So how are you, for example, approaching the regenerate pathway, and why, as you told us, traditional compensation offsetting methods are not enough?
Well, the regeneration part of the process was one of the most challenging for us. We looked at offsetting, and it seemed to divert attention away from us actually reducing our emissions. We're a Latin America specialist, so all travelers involve quite considerable emissions to get to Latin America. So we wanted something which felt like it was going to make a difference. It wasn't going to be kind of greenwashing and saying, pretending that we were had no carbon. So offsetting didn't really work for us. So we were looking at nature-based solutions that would be inspiring for our staff, for customers, and that complemented the work we do as a tour operator, also raising awareness of the issue. So we came across an organization called Rewilding Chile, which do some incredible work in terms of restoring and protecting national parks in Patagonia. The route of the parks in Patagonia connects 17 national parks and is one of the largest carbon sinks in Latin America. So it complemented our business. We were hugely impressed with the work they were doing in terms of protecting these areas, as well as kind of regenerating them. Their work with wildlife and local communities. So in terms of regeneration, what we decided we would do is make a donation. We'd measured our carbon emissions, and we'd make a donation on behalf of every customer that traveled with us to Latin America. And as I say, it complements our overriding commitment to protect the environment, but also it's a great way to showcase some of these incredible areas. So hopefully visitors will go there, and that will have a knock-on effect of kind of giving economic justification for local communities as well.
Thank you, Edward. It's very interesting. Also, I think you mentioned that you are overcompensating, which I think is certainly not a problem. I mean, there are way too many emissions in the atmosphere, so overcompensating when we're not sure how much our emissions represent is great. We even see some stakeholders in our network that are now trying to compensate their historical footprint, because CO2 that you emitted X years ago didn't really disappear. So there are quite a variety of approaches, as I say, all of them very enriching. So really thank you for your openness to share. Susan, I'm going back to you for a second question. You did share quite a bit on how many, I mean, not on how many, but on how your restoration projects look like and so on. Do you have any additional thoughts to share with the audience on regeneration?
I have a lot, but I'll keep it very brief. I mean, the tourism industry, I think, is an important banner holder for sustainable tourism, for the power of the example, for reconnecting people with nature. And I suppose what we have done, well, we've gone through this process. We've had 2 decades of learning, and we have collaborated with many scientists on this. And then what we've tried to do is make quite transparent what we've done and how we've done it. And to that effect, we have significantly increased or bought another property, and that we're going to be doing sustainable tourism alongside regenerative farming and replanting, rewilding. So if you're looking at regeneration or restoration, and I think it doesn't really matter where you are in the world or what size property you have. If you're in a city, maybe it's collaborating, as was mentioned previously, with someone else who is doing this work. And I think, as I said before, it's important to look at, if you're taking that aspect or if you're doing it yourself, how you do it is always important. And I would always suggest that measuring what you're doing from the onset, so that you've got proof of concept, that you can show that you have, you are absorbing carbon or biodiversity is coming back. And I think firstly is looking at goals and objectives, where you are now, where you would like to be, the whole ecosystem assessment, So what is the current state, historical references, climate, current climate, and future projected climate. And then you look at species selection and composition based on what the decisions were made previously. Is it going to be purely for carbon sequestration? Is it for biodiversity regeneration, or is it combination of the two? And then invasive species management. It's the fourth largest driver globally of biodiversity loss. It's not talked about enough, but it's something that most of us could help play a role in. So I hope that answers some of the question.
Thank you so much. Yes, it does, and we can all realize the breadth of knowledge, and really, I hope we can continue exporting all that you've done to other colleagues, especially those working in locations that are very rich in biodiversity and vulnerable. So they have the possibility to replicate this holistic model that you have. I mean, it's basically, for me, it's really inspiring, because it gives us, as you say, proof that our sector is uniquely positioned as a sector, you know, to lead play a leading role in a transformative regeneration, or a transformative role in regeneration, whichever they order the words. So thank you, very inspiring. Dr. Srija, I'm coming back to you with another question. This is now shifting between regeneration and collaboration as both the topics in our round. You explained a little bit before the ethos, the rationale of your, let's say, business proposition. And basically, we see a lot of climate justice thinking on the way you are trying to put together experiences, tourist experiences. When we were reading your plan, we were very interested by stories like, for example, the project with local Keralan fishermen, or the rice farmers that change crop into a crop which is resistant to salty water so that it can continue growing when there is floods. Can you give us a few examples from your end, please? You're on mute, ma'am.
Yes. So basically what Resilient Destination Foundation does is to co-create projects with the communities, especially the coastal areas of Kerala, where we have most of our stakes involved. So we work with the communities to understand the nature of the problem first and co-create projects. And these projects then become consumables that the tourism industry can take and run with. So a couple of examples I can share with you. One, as you said, is working with the farmers in increasing the landscape resilience of coastal reaches. The sea is rising. It has already started entering coastal homes. Land which were previously safe are no longer safe. So you have these coastal agricultural systems which were actually built in order to, as a resilience building measure against an advancing sea. So what we're doing now is to work with these farmers in order to make these systems resilient to the new challenges of climate change also. Through this initiative was born Pokali, the story of a rice. We have a particular rice variety which is resistant to salt. So how can you use that variety of rice, which is also the name of the practice of farming in those parts of the world, and then use that landscape level resilience building, which was perfected around centuries, to build a story as well as help the community become resilient to the incursions of the sea into their homes and farmlands. So this is a project that is already up and running. With the fishermen, what we have designed is that we feel that we have found that through our observations that the estuaries are now getting devoid of fish. The fisher folk are losing livelihood day by day. So all our projects are based on enhancing livelihoods on the one hand also, not necessarily within the tourism sector. So this particular project, which we've called Nilavala, which is a confluence of the moon and the estuary. Here, what we have done is there are these defunct Chinese fishing nets, which have been around for centuries. These are marks, these are symbols of the kind of culture that these lands had. But these days they don't catch any fish at all. So what we do is work with these fishermen, and during the twilight, we transform these into a platform where you can have dinner for the guests. So in the evening, these then become platforms where the stories of climate change, the stories of resilience get told. We don't really transform it permanently. During the daytime, the fisher folk again use it to catch fish, or the paltry amount of fish that there is. But in the evening, we can tell stories of resilience too. And then it becomes a means of supplementary livelihood to the people involved, to the cook, to the fishers, to the local people who are involved in this project. Another project that we have, which is more tech specific, in which my company is also involved, is where we use the community to measure the impacts of climate change on their resources. We have gauges installed, and the community themselves do all the measurements. We have river measurements, groundwater measurements, and rainfall measurements. We have children, homemakers, retired teachers, and other professionals who do this for us. And there is a network of people who do this. And then we host this on a web platform. And then these people then warn the government. It's a bottom-up approach to warning systems, where the last mile does the warning. And this has become a project within a couple of villages in which we work with. And this then becomes a story of resilience. And we have had a lot of partners coming in to witness the story. We have had university students coming in. And this has become a live lab, where it is also a project where regeneration and measurement come together. Because only if you have data at the lower scale, where people have agency, and therefore co-creation is something that we depend heavily on. Whatever solution we plan, we build, we design, we do it together with the community. If the community does not need it, we do not do it. Another example is of a mangrove trail that we have created with the people who do fishing and people who do regenerative activities on their own. So there are people who plant mangroves out of their own pockets. So we use these people to create trails to take visitors into. And then again, the story of how mangroves have become important in times of carbon sequestration. What is the job that just this one person in a village is able to do, and then able to support him. And while we are doing it, also bring in the concept of circular economy, because the travelers then also collect the waste that is accumulated in the estuaries. So we are not just talking about climate change. The danger is that these days, because there is a lot of talk on climate change, we kind of lose the attention on human interventions and what they're doing to the landscape. So our stories try to bring together these two conversations. We just cannot lose our focus on the human element. The global element is there, but the local element is also there. How do you bring these two together in solution building with the people? I hope that answers that question.
Yes, it certainly does. Very interesting to hear further on this people-centered approach, the bottom-up approach for measurement as well, importance of local knowledge. I mean, after all, there will be no resilience without involvement of the local communities. They are the ultimate custodians of the places we like to visit. These places are their home, so how cannot they be involved? Yeah, so I see a lot of collaboration there in what you're doing. Thank you so much for sharing. And I guess we need collaboration at all levels, right? Collaboration at the destination with the local community, but also collaboration with the industry, right, Swanji? I'm coming back to you. So, because you're working with really big players from these European countries. So what steps have you followed to trigger and dynamize with them, busy people, large businesses? How are you doing it?
Well, I mean, Futuris has been working with major industry players on sustainability since our inception already in 2009. So we are already celebrating our 15th birthday this year. And we have followed a very participative approach from the beginning. So also the idea and the concept for the climate footprints and also for ClimaLink, those were actually developed in this participative process and this collaboration that we already had in Futuris with these big players. And I think I reflected a bit on that question, what led to this dynamic, more dynamic situation. And I think some years back, I think maybe during the Corona crisis, the COVID crisis as well, we arrived in a situation where most of the people in the travel industry, including the CEO level, that they got very much aware that the climate crisis is real, and that a collaborative approach was really needed to achieve effective emission reduction in the industry. But there were, and I think today there still are, many uncertainties and question marks around how to reduce the emissions and which concrete measures the travel companies can actually take. And I think that's especially true for tour operators, which make up a lot of our member base, because they have 80–90% of their emissions in their supply chain. And it's very, very difficult for them to assess the emissions and then find effective ways to reduce them. And of course, it's also something that where it gets difficult, where you have to think about having another focus for your products, really changing your products, etc. So we are sure and convinced that the transparency of the climate footprints, which we are working on, will really help with that, because it allows a more objective decision-making basis, at least for the emissions. And that goes for the companies, but it also goes for the tourists, which are, of course, a very, very important part of the equation as well. And with regards to the tourists, we have also engaged them quite early in the process, as we really wanted to find out what do the tourists really need with regards to the climate effect of their trips. So what do we need to show them so that they really understand the climate footprint display, and that they can base their their booking decisions on this. So that was one of the reasons why we actually quite early on in our project conducted a survey with German customers. And that survey really clearly showed that over 2/3 of the customers in Germany are at least on some level interested in keeping their climate footprints as small as possible during their trips. So that's a great news, because these are the customers, and they are 2/3 of all of the travelers in Germany, that those are the customers we can really engage in climate action. And that, of course, was also a big reason why the big players said, okay, we really need to go into this direction. And then we have, of course, the other side of this, because when we asked, when we went on to ask them more detailed questions, half of the climate conscious travelers said that they find it really, really difficult to find information on the climate footprint of their trips, and that they are actually missing a clear labeling and information for that, and that they would really like to see those climate footprints, displayed in all of the booking channels you can imagine, and that, for example, travel agency staff should be able to give advice on this, etc. So in the end, I think the pressure and the urgency to do something, it really came from two ways: from the need of the customers, that they really want to have more information on that, and of course also from the realization from the companies, especially from the big players, that they have to do something, and they need to do something collaboratively, and it needs to get concrete now. We really have to get to a point where we are getting to on decarbonization pathways, and we have to look at our product when it comes to that. So that was really, really important, an important realization, I think, and it really helped to dynamize the process here.
Thank you, Swantje. I mean, certainly collaboration is not to be taken for granted. It's I'm happy it's one of the pathways, so we don't forget about it, because it's really a job on its own. So thanks for all the effort put into that coalition. And okay, we have completed now the second round. So it's again your turn, dear colleagues in the audience, if you have questions. Same as I did before, to break the ice. On the screen, you see the takeaways from our report in terms of regeneration. The ones on collaboration I mentioned at the beginning, that basically the value of collaborating was certainly seen. And on regeneration, what we felt is that many actions that could fit under a banner regeneration were actually scattered across the plan. So our reading of that finding is that we need a bit more guidance. Our signatories need a bit more guidance on what we mean by regeneration and how can we approach it. As we heard from the different speakers, is very context sensitive, but I mean, progressively we have to find solutions that work for us. I see someone in the chat was pointing at Anna Pollock, who was this? Wait, Anu Nailund from Finland. Anna Pollock, who has researched this topic for many years now, and also Turismo Regenerativo in Chile, partners as well. I'm sure they'll be able to help us put together this guidance. In the report, you can find at the back of the report already some, let's say, lists of actions that were found in many of the plans, whether it is for decarbonization, whether it is for regeneration. With this, we don't mean these are prescriptive actions that one needs to include in his or her plan, but rather lists that can guide you in the sense of, okay, what is, let's say, the most common decarbonization actions by my fellow signatories. And the intention is that we progressively improve and polish those listings so that you can have them at hand when planning and when selecting actions you would like to implement. So do we have questions? Please raise your hand. Don't be shy. We still have some minutes. You can take advantage of this fantastic group of panelists. Anybody? Federico Scarpati, I see a hand. Please go ahead. Introduce yourself if you may.
Yeah, thank you very much, Virginia. And congratulations for these 2 days of Roundtable. It's been part of my team has been the first day. I'm joining this second day, and it's wonderful because I think that really in the whole discussion that has, as Susan said, 2 decades of learning, right? It's probably around that. In climate action, for instance, it's been really the discussion. It's been that we've been 20 years already, 2 decades discussing climate. There's a lot of knowledge, tools. There's a lot of expertise around. There's a lot of lessons learned with different pitfalls in the sector. In the sector, I mean, in the whole experience of working on it. And now we are introducing something that is so evident, which is the need of combine nature, the discussion of nature and climate to bring it together, and the discussion of ecosystem restoration as such an obvious thing, link to the whole discussion of climate that is today's shifting very much. I mean, it's probably good, but it's shifting very much into technology solutions because of different good reasons. And at the end of the day, I think that there's no one size fits all solution. It's all about combining solutions, decentralizing solutions and combining solutions. But when we speak about nature positive or restoration, I agree very much with you, Virginia, when you mentioned that tourism is very well positioned, because we've been for not for 20 years or for 2 decades, but since ever working alongside landscapes. And I mean, when we see the data on impacts, we know that tourism, when we talk about poverty alleviation, for example, the major impact is not the number of people we can outreach. That will be agriculture, probably. Okay. But when we talk about impact, we talk about hectares of landscape. How many hectares, how many an ecotourism area, business, concession can conserve, right? So we do have, I do agree 100% with you when we say that we do have in tourism a spirit, a heart, and an experience of decades working with conservation. And now we're talking about something, it's been done for decades too, about restoration. And I think that this is a very important flag and a very important opportunity for tourism to really be part of the solution into the climate discussion. So it's not a collaboration, a side collaboration. It should be very, very central, especially because of this experience on what we are calling now nature positive or tourism or regenerative tourism. Okay, so
Thank you.
most appreciated for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Federico. Just remind us which organization you represent, please.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, we are at Green Initiative. We have two colleagues from Green Initiative. We supported the elaboration of a climate action guide for tourism businesses and destinations, and we're promoting restoration in different hotspots in Peru, Costa Rica, and Brazil, with companies that are traveling anywhere in the world. They don't need to go to Costa Rica to support Costa Rica. They could just fly from the US to Europe and restore in Costa Rica or Peru. I mean, we need to think different to make this work. Okay, thank you for
no, thank you so much for reiterating the point. I mean, I think clearly that's our mission, all of us, that tourism is part of the solution, right? Is at the end of the day our sector, the one we love and the one we really need to transform to make a difference. So we are running out of time, but since we started 5 minutes later, I'm gonna just be very precise and use these 4 minutes left to ask if you allow one question to our dear Vice Minister, and then I will ask you, each and one of you, for a closing statement, maybe something that was left when you were talking that you think is important our colleagues know, or just a bye-bye, as you prefer. But let's proceed this way. I mean, my question to you, Vice Minister, is that is connecting with what Federico says. We need to position tourism sector as part of the solution. And in your intervention, you were talking about the NDC, nationally determined contribution of Honduras, which is currently under review, same as for the rest of the countries in the world, and due to be submitted in March 2025. Are you engaging with that process? What are your expectations? Will you be able to position tourism in there? It's quite a political exercise, I know. So what's your feeling?
Yeah, well, you know, what happened at the beginning is that we were not included. So by joining the Glasgow Declaration, we raised our hand and say, like, listen, we're here and we want to collaborate. So now we have joined the community of practitioners that are working on this new NDC for 2025. And we, you know, sometimes when you think about measuring emissions, it's always hard. How are we going to do this? Who is capable to do this? How are we accounting everything in our country, right? So we were like reviewing our action plan, and we saw that we didn't have many tools. And then the next day after we review our action plan, a company show up and say, listen, I have this measurement of the flights that goes to your country, and I can tell you how many tons of carbon they produce. And it's like, okay, that sounds great. Then we can have a plan. And you know, now we are thinking on to put in the transport sector of the tourism transport sector in our new NDC, so we can commit in reduce the impact by inviting the companies to actually support regeneration activities. So that's a great example of what we expect for our new NDC in Honduras, and how we are providing feedback to our environmental minister in this case.
That's great. I'm really happy to hear. I mean, this is more an announcement for ministries of tourism and climate action focal points in ministries than for everybody, but we will soon have a webinar on NDCs and how connecting tourism with the NDC can also connect with the new Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, operationalization on carbon markets, because if tourism is not well positioned under the NDC, meaning also under mitigation, it would be difficult for us to activate new carbon markets. Sorry, audience, I didn't mean to take much of your time, but just to, I think it would be useful, Vice Minister, if we can also count on your support there to share the experience, what you have learned in this process. So thank you so much for being here today. And now over to the rest of colleagues for the closing statements. Who wants to offer first? Can that be Suzanne, for example?
Of course. Thank you for the interesting conversation today. I would probably leave with I suppose it's the interfaces between tourism and sustainability is where there is potential for a huge impact. And that's when you're going to see whole systems transforming. So when the tourism industry really starts embedding sustainability into the whole system is when we're going to start seeing change beyond tourism, well beyond tourism. Thank you.
Thank you so much for reminding us of that multiplier effect that we can create. Edward, would you like to go now?
Yeah, thanks for hosting us. It's been interesting. It's been really interesting to hear the other speakers and kind of the work they're doing. Yeah, I mean, I guess the Glasgow Declaration has helped us just in terms of strategy, but ultimately, you know, I think travel is a force for good. I think I'd say about 80% of our holidays we sell involve some kind of nature or wildlife viewing opportunity, and I just think yeah, if you give people the opportunity to experience it, to see it, they'll become ambassadors of the need to protect it, and there is an economic justification there for locals as well to protect the environment rather than kind of its exploitation. So yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you, Edward. It's been a pleasure having you. Dr. Zrija, your turn. You're on mute, ma'am.
Audible?
Yes.
Yeah, so for us, we feel that signing up was actually an easy thing to do, as long as it was about acknowledging that there is a climate crisis and there is an individual as well as an industrial culpability. But after signing up, it made us feel so naked and vulnerable, as we realized that there is so much that needs to be done to quantify the good, bad, and the ugly. And once we started documenting what we do, it actually helped us realize that we are sitting on a gold mine of information and knowledge that can actually make a difference, not just for us, but also for the rest of the travel trade in building resilience. So that is what signing up has helped us in realizing the vulnerability of our and the personal culpability and to make it as a common good, that realization. I think that's it.
Thank you. Swantje?
Yeah, I really would like to use this opportunity to say thank you to you, Virginia and Roxana, for taking the Glasgow Declaration to this point. I think it's really amazing, and of course to everyone else who has been involved in this journey, because I really think you've achieved that this is really the massive industry collaboration for climate action, and I feel that we are finally moving into the same direction together, being able to share ideas and concepts and realize synergies around climate action. So yeah, that's really worth a lot, I think. And we would of course love if many of you who are listening today would also like to join in on realizing the vision of the climate footprints and having a consistent calculation standard to being able to measure the climate effect even better. So yeah, if you would like to get in touch with us, do let us know at any time, and we would be very happy to take this forward together with all of you. And thank you again for making these roundtables happening and for everything you are doing around the Glasgow Declaration. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I'm blushing now here, although you cannot see. Dear Vice Minister, would you like to share some closing thoughts?
Sure. Well, I want to also join this thank you to the team, to the UN tourism team for this opportunity and to bring a perspective of a global South country, let's say, in this topic. So we are very happy to have this opportunity to listen all what you're doing and to share what we are trying to do around here. So that's a great experience. Thanks again, Virginia and Roxana, for all this effort, and hopefully we will have more opportunities to learn and share.
Thank you so much, Vice Minister. I'd like to thank Roxana myself as well. Without her support, none of this would be possible. So bravo, Roxana, for your work. Thank you, everyone. You've been fantastic. Certainly there will be more. So I'm going to close with to be continued, and we will keep you posted. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.